everyone, welcome back to my channel. This card is for a video hop that I'm participating in for a Facebook group called Just Cards. Every month there is a different theme, and this month the theme is flowers. So I'm going to be starting with a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock that is cut down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Because I plan on doing a little bit of ink blending, and this paper works the best for me. The stamp set that I'm using today is from Technique Tuesday, and it's called Cherry Blossom Stamp Set, which was released in March of this year. I'm using VersaFine Onyx black ink to stamp out my images because I'm planning on using my zig markers to color them in. This is going to be mostly a one-layer card, so as I stamp out the images and heat set them, I'm going to add masking to create some depth by giving the illusion that there are more layers than there really are. I almost wish I would have coated my images with some clear embossing powder, but maybe next time. For the masking paper, I'm using the full adhesive post-it note that I stamped and cut out off camera. And when I get to the ink blending part, I have to be really careful when I get around to the small parts of the flower that are like thin, because sometimes they will lift and then you can basically ruin your stamped image underneath. So now that I have the entire panel covered, I'm going to be using my Distress Oxide Ink, and I'm starting with Peacock feathers, and I'm gently adding the color, mostly concentrated on the outer edges, and then as I'm working in, I'm using a really light hand to go over the masked area so that I can minimize any lifting and getting that the Distress ink onto my images. So I'll just continue adding and building up color over the entire panel until I'm happy with the outcome, and go gently over those, almost tapping motion to get into those little fine spots. And then once that's completed, I'm going to take a baby wipe and then I scrunch it together so that I can dab off some of the color, which will give me a textured look. And then I take iced spruce, Distress Oxide, and I dab that color back on to create a different layer of texture. And then I'm going to take Peacock feathers again and dab some of that color back on to create a marble effect on this panel. And then my favorite part of doing this one layer card is to remove the masking. There's just something so satisfying to see it revealed when you have a background done. For the coloring, all of these are going to be colored the same way, and I'm using my zig markers for that. and a water brush. I'm starting by adding the my darkest color, which is number 26 light pink, and I add the darkest in the center of the flower, and then I take my water brush and I just kind of blend out the edges so that I don't have any harsh edges. And then I take my lighter marker of the two, which is number 200 sugared almond pink, and where I finished blending out the previous color, I start adding that back in, and then I take my water brush again and I'll go ahead and blend out to the edge of the petals so that there's just no harsh lines and it all looks nice and even. And then where there would be a cast shadow, I use my darker of the two and I add a thin line around it, and then I just ever so slightly blend it out, just not to have any harsh lines, but to still give the appearance that there is a shadow. For the branches, I'm using number 62 dark brown, and I'm blending that out with number 75 brick beige, and I'm using that as my highlight color. And then again, I would use my darker color to add any cast shadow or any areas that I think needs a little bit darkened up. I use that marker, and I'm not using my water brush at all for this because I just wanted a really strong contrast between the pink and the teal color that I have and the branches. I wanted them to stand out. So once my panel is completely dry, I'm gonna take my trimmer and just trim a little bit off the side and a little bit off the top, because I'm planning to put a piece of black cardstock for the card on the top of the card base, and I wanted a little bit of a peekaboo of the black cardstock. Then I'm going to take my Misti and place my panel in so that I can stamp the sentiment in that right corner. And then I'm going to take the beautiful part of the sentiment, and again I'm going to use my Misti so that I can line it up. And then I'm going to stamp that onto a piece of black cardstock. And I treated the cardstock with the anti-static powder so that I don't get any stray embossing powder. And I stamp that out using VersaFine ink. And then I'm taking Wow silver fine embossing powder, and I coated the sentiment, and then I just funnel the excess back into the bottle. And then I'll make sure my heating tool is nice and hot before I bring it over the cardstock to melt the embossing powder. I'll go ahead and trim off the piece, the part of the sentiment, and I'll get as close as I possibly can to the edge of the letters. And then once that's done, I'm taking a piece of, I'm taking black cardstock, and I adhered it to a top folding A2 size card. And then I'm going to take some fun foam, which I do have to cut down, and I'm going to add some really strong adhesive to the back of that and attach that to my panel that I colored. And then I'll go ahead and adhere all of that to the card base. And then I'm going to take part of the sentiment that I trimmed out, and I'll add a piece of fun foam to the back of that and attach it right below the stamped part on the panel. I'm just using my grid mat as a guide to get it on there straight. And then for the final embellishment, I'm using some clear enamel drops from Your Next Stamp, and I'm going to attach those using some multimedia matte adhesive. And that basically completes that card. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it useful. If so, please let me know in the comments below or leave me a thumbs up, and consider subscribing to my channel. I'll have all the supplies I used linked down below, and I'll catch you on the next one.